of celebration as I was listening to figure out what Frank was going to say about me tonight. I really thought that I would just like to be introduced as Sam's sister. And that probably in this community at this time would be the best way that I could be introduced. And for those of you who are doing the calculations, yes, I am his older sister. I did teach him to read. I taught him to ride a bike. I taught him everything that he is now. I'm taking credit. But it is great not only to be in Lincoln, but to see Sam, his wife Lise, and my niece Clara tonight as well. In a few moments, I know that the recipients of the annual Chamber Awards will be announced, including its first ever Lifetime Achievement Awards. I certainly don't want to spoil any of the surprises, and I feel great pressure to get through my remarks quickly so that you can find out who the honorees are tonight. But I do want to take this opportunity to congratulate all of them. You are why this is such a great place to live, to work, and to visit. And believe me, I do know. I do have a camp on Coldstream Pond. I just love it there. Unfortunately, I can't get there that often, not nearly as often as I would like. But on those special summer weekends where I do steal away and go out on the kayak on Coldstream Pond, there is truly nothing better. It is just wonderful. And on those weekends, Lincoln is where I buy my groceries, go to church, and when I run out of propane for my gas grill, I come here for an exceptional meal as well. So I've gotten to know Lincoln very well over the years, and it is truly, as Sam said, an extraordinary community. It certainly is a great accomplishment of this region this last year was that you are going to be welcoming a new member to your business community, the S.W. Collins Company. And when we got the unfortunate news about the mill, I was at the hairdressers in Brewer, and one of the people who's here tonight was also there. We apparently go to the same hairdresser, and her first question to me was, is S.W. Collins Company still going to come to Lincoln? And I was delighted to be able to say, you bet. The vitality here is truly remarkable. I think it's extraordinary that less than a year ago, your chamber had 110 members, and today there are 173, spanning an ever-increasing range of goods and services. That is truly impressive. It speaks to a sense of community that is so important and that makes this region so special. Now, along with all the accomplishments, however, last year did end with a great challenge, and that was the news of the layoffs at Lincoln Paper and Tissue. I know what a difficult decision that was for the company to make, and I know it's deep concern for the workers and for the surrounding communities. The determination to meet this challenge was well described by Steve Clay, the town council chairman and a member of this chamber. His pledge was that this town would do all that it could to help those affected by the layoffs, whether it's mill workers, truck drivers, those who work in the woods, and many others throughout the area. Again, that sense of commitment perfectly describes the strength, the vitality, and the determination of this community. After the announcement, Senator Angus King and I immediately urged the Secretary of Labor to approve trade adjustment assistance for the mill workers. In fact, I spoke directly with the President about the layoffs here and the importance of training programs. Most recently, last Thursday, I met with Secretary of Labor Perez to discuss job training programs. And as he was ending the meeting, I said, "Not so fast. I have something to ask you about." And I told him that I was coming to Lincoln tonight and that I wanted to be able to give good news about the trade adjustment assistance application. And he said to me, "But Senator, it was just filed a couple of weeks ago. We've gotten the information that we need, but it takes a while to process it." And I said, "Try a little harder on that." Well, at 6 o'clock that night, I got a call from the Secretary of Labor saying that the application had been approved. Now, I was going to spend some time describing exactly what this assistance entails, but frankly, I never could do it better than Betty did. I think her personal experience, in which she was trained for a new career under exactly this program, says it far better than I can. And indeed, Betty, your words were, as Sam said, truly inspiring to everyone who is going through a difficult time. And they demonstrate that there is a new life, that there is hope, and that you can prevail, and that we're there to help as well. This challenge underscores what I believe is the #1 issue that we must address in Washington, and that is the need for more jobs. And this is not and should not be a partisan issue. This transcends partisanship, and I know how discouraging it is to see the excessive partisanship in Washington that too often leads to gridlock on absolutely critical issues. One of the actions that I took last fall, of which I'm most proud, was during the government shutdown. I was in my office on October 5th, a Saturday. My staff was all furloughed, so I was alone watching the floor debate. And I kept seeing colleagues on both sides of the aisle coming to the floor and just throwing stones at the other side and not offering any solutions. Well, finally, I just couldn't take it anymore, and I outlined a plan, a 3-point plan, to end the shutdown, to avert our defaulting on our obligations, and to get us back reopened and back to work. I marched over to the Senate floor, gave that speech, and urged my colleagues to come out of their partisan corners, to stop fighting, and to start legislating in the interests of the American people. And I'm proud to report to you that the second I got off the Senate floor, my cell phone started ringing with calls from colleagues who had heard me give this plea that we come together. And I will tell you, the first 2 calls were women senators, so we like to say that the women led the way. But we did have help from a few good men as well, I will admit that. I've also put together this continuing group of what is now 16 senators, bipartisan group, And we're continuing to meet to tackle issues facing our country. And as I said, in my view, jobs and the economy are priority number one. I've put together my own 7-point jobs plan, and I'd like to just touch on a few of the points tonight. It begins with Maine's greatest asset, and that is our hardworking, resilient, talented people. Robust workforce development and ensuring that Maine workers get the education and training that they need to compete in a 21st century economy must be a top priority. Despite our nation's high unemployment rate, there are still jobs going begging. Even here in the state of Maine, I will visit businesses. Think of one recent visit to a machine shop in southern Maine where there were openings for machinists and they just could not get the workers that they need. So I co-sponsored a bipartisan bill that seeks to bring together employers, educators, our vocational schools, our community colleges, our university system, and see if we can better align the education and training that we're providing with the jobs that exist, to make sure that we're training people for the jobs that are out there and for the jobs for tomorrow. And in order to do that, we need to listen to our employers. This legislation would help align America's workforce with the needs of our employers to promote more hiring. Now, my jobs plan does have a particular focus on small business, and that's because nationwide, 70% of the new jobs being created and that have been created in the last decade come from the small business sector. The bill addresses, or the plan addresses, some provisions of Obamacare, also known as the Affordable Care Act, that unfortunately I believe are obstacles to hiring. Now, the president has delayed the employer mandate for a year, but let me tell you what my concerns are about that provision. That is a provision that requires any employer with 50 or more employees to provide qualified health insurance coverage. Now, every business that I know would love to provide health insurance for their employees. After all, it helps them to attract and retain the very best. If they aren't doing it, it's because they can't afford it. So mandating that you have to provide insurance through a stick approach rather than providing incentives, I think is the wrong way to go. And I can't tell you of the number of employers that I've talked to who are in the range of between 40 and 49 employees, and they've said they are never going to 50 employees. And this is even employers who provide health insurance, but they're worried that they can't meet the standards of the new law. In fact, there's a group that call themselves the 49ers because they have 49 employees. And if they go to 50, they were worried that they'll get hit with truly draconian fines. Another problem with the law that I would like to change is the definition of what constitutes a full-time worker. Under the law, it is anyone who works 30 or more hours a week. 30, not the traditional 40-hour work week definition. My fear is that this is going to cause employers to cut the hours of their employees and thus those employees will have smaller paychecks. In fact, this goes way beyond our small businesses. The superintendent of schools in Bangor told me that she's having to now carefully track and restrict the number of hours a week that substitute teachers can work. Now that's damaging both to the substitute's paycheck and to the students because they're going to have this revolving door of substitutes. So I've introduced a bipartisan bill called the 40 Hours is Full-Time Act that would help protect those workers by defining full-time employee as someone who is working 40 hours a week, the standard common sense definition. Another provision of my jobs plan would help reduce the tax burden on small businesses, freeing up capital needed to invest, grow, and add jobs. It allows for increasing expensing of costs. It doubles the tax deduction for a startup business. And it would also help restaurants because under the standard tax law, they can depreciate their equipment and renovations only over a 39.5-year period. Well, a restaurant cannot possibly remain competitive if they renovate only once every 4 decades. So my bill would allow that depreciation over 15 years. The next point is one that I hear over and over again from small business owners, and some of them would put it at the top of their list. They ask me to have Washington to have more certainty in what's going to happen as far as tax and regulatory policies, and to please stop tying up our job creators with red tape and excessive regulation. With unemployment so high, we must ensure that federal regulations do not impose an unnecessary burden on job creation. So my plan has some common sense provisions. It would require federal agencies to take into account the impact on small businesses and job growth before imposing new rules. In addition, if a small business makes a first-time paperwork mistake from which no harm results, my bill would allow that business to seek a waiver from any financial penalty. As the most senior Republican on the Transportation Appropriations Subcommittee, one of my highest priorities is to strengthen our nation's transportation infrastructure. After all, the safe and efficient flow of people and goods is critical to America's economy and to regions like this one. We must make crucial investments to address our nation's backlog of infrastructure needs. And we must also take a look at transportation policy. I was very concerned about a policy that federal law imposed on Maine until I was able to change the law that forced our heaviest trucks off the interstates and forced them to travel on Maine's secondary roads and downtown streets. That made no sense whatsoever. It was costly to business, it wasn't as safe, and it was something that I joined forces with the public safety community in Maine, with our trucking companies, with our mills, and eventually I was able to get that law changed. Now, it wasn't changed permanently. What I got was a 20-year provision. Someone else is going to have to take it over after that time. That was quite a battle. And in fact, the House member of Congress that I was negotiating with used to go like this when he saw me coming because he got so tired of hearing about truck weights. But the fact is, this law's made our secondary roads and downtown streets safer and reduced costs for many businesses, including, and most notably, our forest products industry. Finally, as a native of Aroostook County, I know that family farms are a cornerstone in many communities in our state. In addition to providing a safe and healthful food supply, Maine's farmers sustain our rural communities, protect our environment, and preserve open space that is a vital part of our heritage. I've enjoyed picking strawberries at a farm on the outskirts of Lincoln, and I picked potatoes as a child growing up in the county. So you can imagine that I took special exception when the federal government actually tried to prohibit the use of the potato in the school breakfast program altogether and limit it in the school lunch program. It was really government at its worst. But right now, building on that success, I'm trying to get the fresh white potato included in what is known as the WIC program, the Women, Infants, and Children Nutrition Program. Would you believe that the potato is the only vegetable prohibited in this program? You can buy iceberg lettuce, which doesn't have nearly the nutritional value, with apologies if anyone grows iceberg lettuce here, as the potato, but you cannot get reimbursed. You cannot use your WIC voucher for potatoes. I'm not giving up on that. I co-sponsored legislation to reform the arcane federal milk pricing system that threatens our remaining dairy farms. Maine's agricultural community is an important part of our heritage and vital to our future. So those are some of the practical proposals that have the potential to energize our economy, put people back to work, both here in Maine and around the country. Common sense, hard work, pulling together in times of difficulty, and celebrating our success are the values that define our state. These are the values of the Lincoln Lakes region that we honor and celebrate tonight. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of your evening, and I hope that you all have a happy, healthy, and prosperous 2014. Thank you.